Okay, so today through Wednesday, we are going to be actively reading a story called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and you're going to be doing that using Cami. So let's go ahead and pull up the story, and you're going to open with Cami. And I'm going to be doing this with you for the next 3 days. So as long as you watch these videos and follow along with me, you should be good to go. Okay, so if you're looking, it is a pretty lengthy story. It's 8 pages in length. Again, we're splitting it up into 3 separate days. So follow along with me each day, and we'll make sure that this whole story is completed by Friday. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is add a text box. And I need to look at the focus and the key. So we have been talking about irony. So the first focus question should be, where is irony in the story, and what types? Okay, the next thing that we should focus on is called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So clearly, those are probably two characters, and they probably have different character traits. There is going to be a follow-up worksheet with this, and I'm telling you now that I do ask you about character traits for each of these characters. So let's go ahead and put that in our focus. What are character traits of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we need to establish a key. The first thing that I want to do is let's talk about important story details. And we're going to highlight that in blue. Okay, the next thing we'll discuss irony. And if you remember, there are 3 types of irony. There's situational, and we'll do a pink highlight. Verbal, do orange. And dramatic. Dramatic we'll put in green. Remember, situational irony is something that we wouldn't expect. We would expect one thing, the opposite happens. Verbal irony is sarcasm, and then dramatic irony is when we have more information than a character does in the story. All right, and the last thing that we need to do are character traits. And we'll just underline those or add a text box. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Silence, shouted Sir Gawain one New Year's Day, banging his table. The whole court had gathered at the great hall of Camelot, and the first course of a huge feast had just been carried in, to the accompaniment of trumpet fanfare from the minstrels in the gallery. Silence for the king! Yelled Gawain again, banging his goblet even harder. The music faded, the babble of voices died down, and soon only the crackling of the log fires broke the silence. Okay, so the important thing here is that it's on New Year's Day. So let's get our highlighter. And I'm just going to highlight New Year's Day in blue. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, said Arthur. Now, before we begin this splendid feast, who's going to tell us a story? He looked around for a volunteer. It was custom at Camelot on the feast days. No one could start eating until the king had heard a tale of a brave deed or a dangerous quest. Come on, knights of the round. And then a loud commotion outside in the courtyard, and the clatter of horseshoes on the stone cut him off in mid sentence. The massive doors of the hall flew open, and with great flourish, in rode an enormous man on an enormous horse. Okay, so this is actually going to be situational irony. So if you remember situational irony, we're going to color in pink. So let's get our pink highlighter. Okay, and we're going to start highlighting here. So if you remember in the story, King Arthur wanted to tell a story before they started eating on New Year's Day. And then in the middle of his sentence, he got cut off by an enormous man on an enormous horse. So this is situational irony. We're expecting him to tell a story, and then it looks like something more interesting than a story is about to happen. Let's actually put that. I'm going to type that. We're expecting a story, and then it happened in real life. All right, let's go ahead and continue reading. He was far taller than any ordinary man, with huge hairy hands, large, powerful limbs, and piercing red eyes staring out of a terrifyingly fierce face. But the most extraordinary thing about him, which made everyone gape in amazement, was that he was bright green all over. So you can actually kind of see a picture of what we're looking at here. Not only were his clothes green, but his hands were green and his face was green. His long, thick hair and his big, shaggy beard that spread all over his chest were as green as grass. Even his gigantic horse was green from head to hoof. He carried no weapons except a colossal green battle axe clasped in one hand, and the other held a big branch of holly high above his head. Okay, I'm going to stop again because we have situational irony again. So he's carrying this colossal, which means huge. He's carrying this big battle axe. I didn't want to do that. I only wanted to do this. He's carrying this huge battle axe in one hand, and then in the other hand, he has a branch of holly. Okay, so let's again highlight that in pink, and then I'm going to put under here. So obviously a large axe is used for fighting. But then he's carrying holly as a sign of peace. So this is kind of giving us a conflicting message here. The Green Knight rode majestically through the stunned silence of the hall, slowly surveying the scene. And then he cast the holly down on the floor and called out, "Who's in charge here?" His big, booming voice echoed across the cavernous hall. No one answered. Like everyone else, Arthur was dumbstruck. He just stared at the strange, magical figure in complete astonishment. Several minutes elapsed before he had recovered enough to greet the man and invited him to his feast. "I have come to eat with you," said the Green Knight bluntly. "And don't worry, I'm not here for a fight either. That's why I brought a branch instead of a sword. And if I wanted to fight, I'd be wearing my armor, wouldn't I?" Arthur breathed a sigh of relief. The prospect of having to get up to fight this huge man instead of sitting down for a feast was not one he relished. "What have I come to offer?" continued the knight, swinging his axe at an arm's length. is a little New Year's challenge. The fame of your knights has spread, you see. We've even heard about the brave deeds in my castle in the north, so I've come to set a small test to find out if their reputation is deserved. All right, we need to highlight that. Actually, let's underline that. Okay, so this is telling us some things. I'm also going to comment a text box here. So the Green Knight is basically questioning Arthur's knights and their abilities. He's challenging them. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. Sir, replied the king, I am sure there are plenty of people here who would joust with you or fight in a single combat if that's what you have in mind. No, boomed the knight. I've already said I don't want to fight. These boys would have no chance against me anyway. They're far too feeble. All right, let's underline that part. Okay, and I'm going to add a text box. Okay, this is showing us that the Green Knight is arrogant, cocky, conceited, whatever you want to say. He thinks he's better than Arthur's knights. And he was staring directly at Gawain. A wave of anger swept around the table, but nobody dared to respond. But if anyone here is brave enough to accept just one blow for another, he said, I'll hand over my axe and let him strike me first. He can aim the blow wherever he wants, and I promise I won't even flinch, just as long as I can return the blow exactly a year from today. Okay, this is important. We're going to put that as story details. And I'm going to highlight that in blue. Cami is not being very cooperative for me today. Okay, so I have this highlighted, and I also want to make a text box that he's challenging them. So basically what he's saying, what a knight does to him, he gets to do to them 1 year later. At this, the Green Knight rolled his red eyes ferociously, brandished his axe, and looked all around the hall for someone to answer his challenge. When nobody stepped forward, he roared with laughter and drew himself up to his full height. Is this really the court of King Arthur? He bellowed scornfully. And can these really be the famous knights of the Round Table? I don't know how you earned your reputation when even the mention of an axe makes you all tremble with fear. Okay, we need to highlight this. I'm going to use an orange color. Remember, we said verbal irony is in orange. Okay, so basically he's taunting them right now. Then he rocked with laughter again until Arthur's face went red from embarrassment. But his shame soon turned to anger, and unable to bear the gibes of a moment later, he sprang forward. "This is madness, sir," he said, striding over to face the huge man. "But if you really want to play such a stupid game, give me your axe and get ready." The Green Knight dismounted, handed the heavy weapon to Arthur. The king gripped the huge handle firmly and was preparing to strike when Gawain jumped up from his seat. "Please, uncle," he said, "let me accept instead of you, and I have yet to prove myself worthy to be a knight of the Round Table, and this could be my chance." Okay, we need to highlight, or actually, let's underline this because this is showing us character traits. Okay, so this is telling us that Gawain is brave and he's eager to prove himself. Arthur was at first reluctant to let Gawain take his place, but was swayed by the eager expression of the young man's face, so he handed him the axe and wished him luck. Okay, this is actually direct characterization right here. "I'm glad that at least one of you so-called knights is brave enough to accept," said the Green Knight. "What's your name, boy?" All right, and again, we have some verbal irony. "My name is Gawain," came the answer, "and I am not a knight of the Round Table, and not a boy. And as a knight, I give you my promise that I will strike just one blow on the understanding that whatever happens, you will return the blow 1 year from today." Okay, that's important. Highlight that in blue. "I am pleased you accept the terms of the agreement," said the knight, "and after you've struck your blow, I'll tell you who I am and where you find me in a year's time. But now let's see what you can do with this axe." The knight then knelt down on the floor, bowed his head, and pulled his long hair forward to expose the back of his green neck. Gawain gripped the axe, took a deep breath, and with all his strength swung it high in the air. Then, taking a small step forward, he brought it down swiftly down on the knight's bare neck with such great force that razor-sharp blade sliced straight through the flesh and bone and sent sparks flying as it hit the cold stone floor. All right, all that needs to be highlighted in blue. So at this point, Gawain beheaded the Green Knight. He cut off his head. The huge, handsome head thudded to the ground and rolled slowly across the floor. Get that highlighted in blue. Blood spurted from his severed neck, bright red against the green. But the knight did not falter or fall. He stood up and strode forward with his arms outstretched, grabbed his head by the hair, and turning to his horse, swung himself into the saddle as if nothing unusual had happened. Okay, we need to use pink. And if you remember, pink is for situational irony. Okay, so let's just recap here as soon as I get this. There we go. Okay, so let's recap here. Gawain cut off the Green Knight's head. The knight picked up his head and got on his horse as if nothing happened. Now, if you remember the deal that they made, if you remember this challenge that they made, this Green Knight gets to do the same thing to Gawain 1 year from today. So what does this mean for Gawain? This means that Gawain knows he's going to die. Okay, let's continue. Amidst the gasp of astonishment, he raised his head in his hand, turned his face towards Gawain, and out of the mouth came these words. Okay, time out just for a second. Let's get this all in pink. Okay, and this is telling us a character trait of the Green Knight. This is telling us that he's deceiving, he's a trickster, can't be trusted. Okay. The Green Knight said, "Keep your promise, Sir Gawain, to meet next New Year's Day. It will not be hard to track me down, though my castle is far away, through the mountains and valleys of Wales to the forest of Wirral beyond. In the place called the Green Chapel there will seal our bond. Ask for the knight of that chapel, for many there know me by name. If you search me out, you shall find me. If you fail, you shall live in shame." Highlight all of that in blue. These are important story details. Okay, so I just want to recap here. Gawain knows he's going to die. So why would he even go through with this deal? If you remember in the Code of Chivalry, being shamed or embarrassed is worse than death. So Gawain has to go through with this. And with that, the knight of the Green Chapel spurred on his horse to a gallop, out to the doors, clattering across the courtyard and away into the night, through the swirling snow, still dangling his head by its long green hair. Okay, so remember, he has 1 year. He must return the blow in 1 year. The year passed quickly for Gawain as seasons followed season. The snow melted and the green leaves appeared on the trees. The chill winds of spring gave way to summer's heat, and the sweet, rich scent of roses faded all too all too quickly when the meadows were filled with the cries of reapers, when the harvest had been gathered and the wood piles were stacked high. Gawain began to prepare for his quest to meet the Green Knight. Okay, so let's highlight that in blue. That's an important story detail. Okay, and this is also giving us a character trait of Gawain. So, in, I feel that this shows that Gawain's not only brave, he's also honorable. He badly wants to be part of the Knights of the Round Table. He knows that this is going to be the end for him if he goes through with this challenge. He's still going anyway. On the first morning of November, he strapped on his armor and his sword, and with his green knight's axe in his hand, mounted his war horse, Gringolet. His squire handed him his helmet, and then remembering the big man's parting words, Gawain set off on his perilous quest, riding alone through the realm of Lorgus, the wild mountains and the wooded valleys of Wales, through rain and snow, across icy rivers, shrouded in fog, through deep, dark forests and long, lonely, wind-swept cliff tops. At the night, he slept in his armor along the cold, craggy rocks, fearful of always of an attack from wolves, bears, and robbers. By day, he fought long and bloody battles with monsters, dragons, and giants, which in those days still lived in the wilderness. Few others could have survived all the dangers and hardships of that bitter winter, but Gawain struggled on until he reached the forest of Worrell. He asked everyone he met if they knew the Knight of the Green Chapel, but no one had ever heard of him. All right, few things that we need to do. We need to underline few others could have survived. Because again, this is showing us that he's brave, determined. And then I'm going to highlight down here in pink. He asked, here we go. He asked everyone if he'd met that they knew the Green Knight. No one had ever heard of him. So we would expect him to be well known. So to me, this is strange. Okay, we are stopping here for today. And we'll continue on tomorrow.